Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog, and it's time to bring back Ryan and Russell Read and Review. Welcome back, Ryan.
Thank you. I don't know how I feel about this read and review. Um, maybe we should have picked a different book. I don't want to spoil anything, but this was a rough one.
Ryan and I decided that we were going to take a moment from our lives and jump into the Colleen Hoover pandemonium that has struck the United States. And we have read Verity by Colleen Hoover, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But if you haven't done one of these videos before, we sort of break it up as follows. I'm going to do a little bit about Colleen Hoover. Ryan will summarize the plot of the novel Verity. We'll try to keep it pretty high level in the beginning, and then we will let you know when the spoilers begin. But I have a feeling we have a bit to say, Ryan.
I have opinions. I'm pretty sure you do too.
Oh, goodness. And most people come to my channel and everyone says, you never talk about anything, you're never negative, you're always really positive. Well, if that's what you've been waiting for, I think you're about to get the video of your dreams.
Maybe that book will end up on fire by the end of this video. Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? Well, let's give Colleen Hoover some credit. So Colleen Hoover is, she's a little bit older than I am. She was a social worker by trade. She's a mother of three. She started her life as a self-published author. That's where her first book came out. I believe it was published in 2012 was when it was self-published. And she published it, I think, originally so her mom could read it on her Kindle. That was sort of like the whole point of it all. And then she published a sequel. And then the world of book talk took over and made Colleen Hoover a best-selling American. I don't know if she's internationally best-selling, but I will say that last year alone in 2022, Colleen Hoover had 6 of the top 10 best-selling books in the United States.
Wow.
I mean, good for her. Good for her.
Yeah. I mean, that's an incredible feat. I don't know when the last time that would have happened.
Yeah, I was trying to say, there's a quote here. I'm reading from Wikipedia. It says that Alexandra Alter of the New York Times wrote, to say she's currently the best-selling novelist in the United States, to even compare her to other successful authors who have landed several books on the bestseller list, fails to capture the size and loyalty of her audience. So she's big.
Huge. Absolutely huge. A literary star.
Okay, we'll use star loosely there in quotation marks. So Ryan and I were having dinner one night, and I sort of posed this idea of reading a Colleen Hoover book. And whenever, someone goes off their normal genre, I think that's always exciting. So I said, let's read Verity. It's her thriller versus her romance. The back of the book does call it a romantic thriller, which we will talk about. We will 100% talk about. Ryan, what was this book about? What happened?
All right, so Lowen, I don't remember her last name, is a writer, and she gets called into a meeting in New York City where she's asked to ghostwrite the end of the series for Verity Crawford, who is this big author who wrote like 6 out of 9 books or something, and it's this big series, but she had a tragic car accident, and now she's like in a coma fugue state. Like, she can't walk, she can't talk, so she can't write. And so they ask Verity, or they ask Lowen to come in and become a ghostwriter for Verity. So logically, Lowen goes to her office and moves into their house. with Verity's husband Jeremy and their young son Crew. And then while Lowen is researching this novel series, she learns about the tragic history of the family, where two daughters have died. Verity ends up in a car accident that renders her unable to speak, move. And yeah, that kind of sets up the plot of the book. Mysterious events start happening in the house, and that's where the thriller aspect comes in.
Yeah. So the book starts, so I don't think it's a spoiler to say the book starts with a bang.
Yes. The book starts with Lowen in New York City about to cross the street, and somebody on his cell phone walks into the street and gets run over by a car and gets his head squished. She becomes splattered in blood and like is going to this important meeting, and a very nice gentleman comes and helps her by washing her in a public bathroom and then giving her his shirt.
I think that's a fair setup for what's to come. I think if
Yeah.
if that is not enough to entice you, I don't know what would be.
And we're talking these events happen by page 3.
Absolutely.
This
Yes.
is the very beginning. This is how it opens.
Yeah. So let's talk about what we liked.
Okay.
I'm going to say, so I read this book in 2 airplane trips from where I live in the Bay Area to San Diego. So it's about an hour and 20 minutes. So you can say that on those plane trips, I probably read for 50 minutes each trip. And I read the entire book. So the book is readable. Like, it's not a hard book to get into. I definitely think that she has a very conversational style. I will say, so Verity is an author, and she writes thrillers from the point of view of the villain. And those books sounded really good. I would read those. Those I found, and I think they were all from like different points of view of like different negative emotions. I can't quite remember.
Yeah, it was like 9 negative emotions. Like I want to say 7 deadly sins, but it wasn't that. It was something like that.
It was something like that. So yeah, so I think, the book is very readable. I think she is creative. She has some ideas that seem interesting. What about you? What would you say?
I think at the beginning, I was kind of into it. Like, I like books about writers and writing and reading. And so I thought it was a clever plot that like this woman was disabled and then a ghostwriter comes in and there's mysterious things. Like, I was bought into that plot line. Soon it goes off the rails and then I was less bought in. But I thought the initial premise was good. I also, at the beginning, Lowen has just lost her mother. And so there were some interesting themes at the beginning that I thought could have been explored.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's where we move into sort of how the issues with the book are. For example, Lowen's mother's passing is clearly very important to start the book, but like many things, gets lost in the shuffle. And there's never really any resolution regarding a number of the strings that are thrown out.
There are so many like dangling threads of story that just don't ever get touched or make sense. It's very bizarre. I feel like this is where I think self-publishing is fine, and I applaud anybody who does it, but having somebody else professionally look at your book and say like, but why did you include this is useful. And that's why I tend not to read self-published books, because I don't think it has that scrutiny, that refinement that really makes a tight plot, and that's really engaging.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, so self-published novels too, also because they don't tend to have an editor, tend to have some grammar issues or some typos because you read your own stuff so often. You
Right.
know what you want it to say that you often miss seeing what it actually says, right?
Right.
This book doesn't have that. Like, definitely, I never felt like, oh my gosh, someone missed a big issue with the grammar or the sentence structure or something like that. So she has control of that.
I would say technically it's fine. Like
Yeah.
it's not a it's not like a junior high essay or something that's like just totally bad. Like it's readable. It is worded fairly well. The writing isn't awful. I mean, I think it's more a taste issue than a technical issue.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that too. I do think that, again, going back to what you sort of said about having another set of eyes on it, um, there are certain themes that are just repeated to the point they are like beat to death. Like in the
Right.
first part of the book, the fact that her mother dies and now she is sort of looking for somewhere to live, and this sort of sense of never leaving her house since her mom got ill is just sort of rehashed over and over and over again, and then dropped completely. And then it goes on, and I think we will save what some of the next part repeating things
Yeah.
are to the spoiler section. But what happens is, yes, it's very readable. There's nothing wrong with the structure, but the writing is very simple. Like, this is not, there's no nuance to it. There's no creating
No.
atmosphere, or you're never going to read a section of this out loud thinking, oh my gosh, I really get this location or this emotional pull.
Right.
The writing is very much like, I don't know, diary-ish, just well
Yeah.
written. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think gets in the way of the fact that that's why it's so readable, because I think it's just very simple.
That's true. Yes, I agree.
And let's, before we do the spoiler section, how can we talk about the end without spoiling it?
Um, okay. I will say calling this a romance is misleading. I don't think of it as romantic. Um, as we were approaching the end, I thought of a number of different threads that could have like been pulled together to make this interesting book. And none of it happened, and it just kind of skeeved me out. I don't know if that I don't think that's too spoilery. Like I just didn't like it. I just didn't like the characters. I didn't like what they were doing. I didn't think that it was a sophisticated thriller type ending. Like it was very dumb.
I think that's a good word. So I think for me, the way I see it is, so this book has two twists. It's a twist and then a twist, right? I saw the twist, the first twist, coming 250 miles away. Like, I knew a lot of what that was. And then the second twist is so ridiculous. Like, it's so ridiculous that it takes away from anything that the book had tried to do previously.
Yeah.
And kind of left me seriously uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. To the point where you're like, there is no romance in this at all.
No.
If this is somebody's idea of romance, I think they need therapy.
Yes, 100%.
I had a friend on Instagram who messaged me, and he's currently reading this with another friend. And I just posted some quotes from the book, and he's like, what am I getting into? And he's a teacher, and he was saying that, like, he often gets in discussions with his students in like 7th grade because they say Colleen Hoover is like the best like author ever. And I mean, that's fine. Like, I wasn't reading the most amazing stuff when I was in 7th grade either, but this stuff is disturbing. This
Yes.
was not just like some like weird, boring fantasy novel or like something that's just kind of like dumb. It's like it's bad. Like it's like
Um,
I don't want anyone to think that this is how relationships should work.
yeah, and the idea that children are reading this, even if they're not saying she's the best, but they're reading it in general, to me, I am a proponent of, I will support kids should read. They should read what they should want to read. Absolutely. But there are things, at least in this novel, Ryan and I have to admit, we have read no more Colleen Hoover. We don't know if we will ever read any more Colleen Hoover. Um, but I wouldn't want kids walking away with any sort of learnings from this book.
Right.
That would scare me.
Very much. Very much.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe this is the exception. This is her thriller. So
Yeah.
maybe they're not all like that. I don't know.
True. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. So Ryan and I are going to continue to go, but from this point forward, we're not going to stop the spoiler talk. So if you don't want to watch this video until you've read the book, I would turn it off now. But if you want to just stick around and hear what we really think about all the twists and turns, here's your warning. We're about to talk about spoilers. Okay, Ryan, where do we start?
Where do we start? It's okay. So first thing is that this book has a book within a book. So Lowen is in the office and finds a manuscript of a memoir from Verity about her life. And it is bad. Like, it's really bad. Like, I was kind of bought in until that started, and I just thought it was terrible. I was like, what? How is this a best-selling author? I mean, Colleen Hoover is a best-selling author, and I mean, she wrote that, so I guess it makes sense in the real world. But like, I thought it was dumb. And I mean, and the memoir talks about how awful Verity is and how she like hates her daughters because she can't have sex with her husband as much. And it's just really weird. It's so weird. And I did not like that at all.
Yeah. So the book, so it sort of is this premise that, and you later find out that Verity's writing to like expunge something from her soul or something. It's very weird.
Yeah.
But when you're reading that part of it, you're like the woman Verity, it's so clearly set up for us to now hate Verity that it's almost embarrassing how blatant it is. Like, it is
Right.
so clearly put in the book for us to for a red herring, right? It's exactly what it is. Let me
Right.
make you hate her so that you think anything that she's done or has done to her is warranted.
Right.
And you're right. Like, the writing in the memoir is terrible.
Yeah. I just don't know how she made that choice to make it that bad. Like, I almost feel like it was like, I just don't know how she did it.
Yes.
Like, because it's not like the overall book is great, and then she just made this awful, awful memoir. But it just didn't make sense because like this is about writers. And so it didn't make sense like why it would be written so poorly.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is, Colleen Hoover, all the more power to her, self-published, not a writing like major, didn't take any writing classes. I mean, she may have, but that doesn't come out.
Right.
And I think that was like, she, in her attempt to be writerly, it comes off as absurd.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I mean, that's a hard thing to do anyways.
yeah,
And it just lacked any sophistication.
yeah,
So in this memoir, Verity is clearly a horrible person. She essentially like confesses to murdering her children. Or one child, I
One
guess.
child.
Um, and there's just like really weird, ridiculous stuff. Like, okay, one daughter goes to a sleepover and dies because she has a peanut allergy, but she thinks the other daughter like caused it. They're twins, and the other daughter caused the one, I don't remember their name, sorry, but like one of them to die from being exposed to peanuts. And she um then she kills the other daughter because she thought she killed that daughter killed the first daughter. And so it just didn't make sense. Like who would feel that way?
Yeah.
And the whole thing was like she kind of was like doing this stuff because she wanted to sleep with her husband more. Um, and I feel like they could have worked that out. Um,
Well, she was angry because her husband, in the memoir, she says that she's angry because her husband loves the children more than she believes he loves her anymore.
right.
And there's so much to dive into. And we're just talking about a portion of this overall story.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
and Ryan, you can help me because so the daughter who she murders is on
Yeah.
the spectrum, right? We
Yeah.
learn that she is on the spectrum,
Yes.
and her father talks about how he really connected with her, but she she wasn't always communicative, which Colleen Hoover finds acceptable to villainize, right?
Yes.
She doesn't think that her daughter is on the spectrum. She thinks that her daughter is a killer because of the way she is. Which, can we take a moment and realize that that's not acceptable?
Especially like when there's no other purpose for that. Like there's really no discussion or nuance about talking about somebody on the spectrum where like you're like, oh, well, they're confused. I thought she was a psychopath. It turns out she's autistic or something. But like, yeah, it's so weird. Like she just threw it in there.
Yeah.
I felt like there were so many things like that. Like the mom thing was that her mom was dying was thrown in and like harped upon at the beginning and then completely abandoned. She keeps talking about being a sleepwalker the whole time, and that goes nowhere. And I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, who cares?
All it does is create this moment where she sleepwalks, and then the husband gets nervous, so puts a lock on the outside of her door, which then creates tension because one night it's unlocked and he's not the one that did it. And I was like, that is just lazy. It's just lazy.
Lazy, but like, who would agree to that? Even if you're a
Exactly.
sleepwalker, like, okay, maybe you don't live at this woman's house. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on. Maybe you go and get your own hotel room or something. Like, it just made no sense. And it was kind of S&M-y,
A little
like,
bit, yeah.
about it, because, like, at one point, the husband sneaks into the room while it's locked, and, like, they have sex, while his disabled wife is, like, in the next room, and young son. And then they're like, oh, wait, our son, Crew, by the way, dumbest name ever, is gonna wake up and like I can't get out. And so it was just so weird. Everything about it was weird.
Yeah, so I think that that's a good segue into the romance, which is technically a woman who winds up having an affair with the man who hired her to finish the books of his wife, who is in some sort of comatose state. And that's the romantic part of the book, I believe, unless we count like the imagining of the Verity and her husband's relationship in the beginning. I guess there's technically some romance there. They meet at a party, they fall in love. But really, the big romantic part of this book is a woman who's having an affair with a man whose wife is in a coma
In that same house.
in the same house upstairs.
While she's doing ghostwriting work for that woman. After like 3 days. Like, it's not been long.
It's fast.
It's very fast. And people make choices and sometimes things happen in the heat of the moment. But if you think that like the guy who cheats on his wife in a coma is a good guy, you might be wrong. And then she learns everything that happened, and she still stays with him.
Yeah. Talk about threads that aren't even in. So Lowen keeps seeing Verity around the house. That's sort of the thriller aspect of it. She sees her stare at her. All indications that Verity is really not in a coma. Which, by the way, I think is like thriller 101. Like, it was like, she's really not in a coma was not a surprise to me at all.
Yeah, well, they make it clear. Like she's standing at the top of the stairs. Lowen like can tell if somebody's like standing at the top of the stairs, and it's like Verity. She's famous. And but why is she the only one that sees her? Like, Jeremy doesn't after months and months.
Yeah, but then let's go into another one of those threads, Ryan.
Right.
Prue, the son, continuously tells people, my mom is talking to me. And no one seems to think that this is strange. If she were in a coma and he thought his mom was talking to him, the child clearly needs therapy, right? He needs help to deal with all of the tragedy that he has dealt with. If he is truthful, his mom is not in a coma.
I mean, and let's get to mega absurdity number one. No one can pretend to be in a coma for that long. Nobody's gonna wake up in the hospital after a car accident and fool all the doctors and nurses that she was in a coma the whole time. You can't do it. Like, what? You're just gonna sit there and let them put a bedpan under you? Like, why? Just that's just so dumb. Don't pretend to be in a coma. Go to the police. It's so weird. And then, yeah. I mean, and then Cruz saying oh, I see mommy alive. And it that is logical that he was making that up. But no, she was in a coma. And it turns out Lowen's the only one that can see her doing stuff. And there's a nurse helper that comes in every day. Nonsense. It was so dumb. So dumb. It's like a really bad soap opera. Days of Our Lives, Marlena was in a coma for 18 years and finally just woke up, but turns out she wasn't. And her twin was so it was that kind of nonsense, but not fun. It lacked any idea of fun. I think that was part of the problem, is that this was told very earnestly. I feel like this was an earnest story where it's oh, isn't this romantic? This woman leaves his wife in the coma and goes to the bedroom next door and screws the ghostwriter. I don't get it.
Yeah, one, I love that you did all of that about Days of Our Lives. I do know who Marlena is. That was a moment there where I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, soap operas have been part of the world forever. But I mean, soap operas don't take themselves seriously. This book was taking itself seriously, which I think becomes even more problematic. I mean, there is a scene where the nurse yells at Lowen or sort of talks sternly because Lowen doesn't talk directly to Verity as if she's a person and how that can cause trauma. And I'm like, so she's in a coma, you're mad at her because she's not addressing her, but she's talking to you. It's one of those moments where it's supposed to make it more real that she's actually in this vegetative state. But it was so silly. It didn't make any sense other than this plot device.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all it was.
No.
It didn't make sense. So should we talk? So that was the first twist you were talking about, right? Verity's
That
not
she is,
actually
yes, she's not in a coma. Yes, that.
not really a twist because I just assumed like it wasn't well done that it was like, oh, something there. I hear something, or like, there's like thrillers where it's like you really don't know what's going on for like most of the. This is just like Lowen's are, and I'm like, well, clearly she's not in a coma. Like, you don't just make that up. Like, it was so yeah. First twist, twist in quote. Okay, and then the second twist.
Well, so okay, big spoilers here. We're gonna talk about the ending. So Lowen gives the manuscript to what's his name, Mr.
Jeremy.
Crawford? Jeremy. I wanted to say James. Jeremy, which angers him. Right. So he rushes into the room where Verity is and more or less attacks her, telling her to wake up. And Lowen and him murder her.
And not just murder her, like he's like in the heat of the moment going to kill Verity, and Lowen's like, no, not that way. We have to make her choke on her own vomit so it looks like an accident. Oh my God. Like, if you can pull that out in like that kind of frantic scene that was like, no, we have to do this very specific murder so we're not caught. Like, you're a sociopath. You are a bad person, Lowen. Bad.
What? I mean, there's so many things to unpack here, but one, this is a woman who got splattered with a man's insides and did not stay, walked to a coffee shop bathroom with a stranger to rinse herself off and change so she wouldn't meet a meeting. So, and she is a thriller writer. That is sort of what she does. So maybe this is something that she has thought about. But all of that aside, it's like, you're okay helping this new man you love after 3 weeks murder a woman who is not in a coma. So
right.
It's okay.
You know she's not in a coma. I mean, so like you're like, okay, she's a liar. To be fair, her like manuscript memoir says she murdered her daughter. That's bad.
Yeah.
That's a bad thing. It turns out that Jeremy already read the manuscript.
Yeah.
And because of that, he caused the car accident that put her in the coma. Why no one goes to the police with clear evidence that like this woman wrote this manuscript that confesses to all of these crimes she committed, like easy. You could just go and convict her. Like you don't have to like put her in a car and like stage an accident. And I guess he hoped she would die, but she just ended up in a coma, but not really. Like, no.
And not only that, we find out, right, that wasn't the first time he tried to kill her. He had tried to kill her before, then the car accident,
Yes.
and then he's successful. So Lowen, once she finds out, so what happens is they kill Verity, and Lowen, oh, this is my favorite thing. So as they're having an affair, they choose the pull-out method because that's successful.
Right.
The 1950s.
Well, irresponsible if 7th graders are reading this.
Yes.
Asterisk. It does not work. Use approved birth control. Do not rely on that. No matter what he says, girls, serious. Don't rely on that.
True.
Lowen is not a role model. She's an idiot. No.
So she winds up getting pregnant. So we find out that she's pregnant. They've killed Verity. They are now a family. Crew is part there, and they are now all together and living a happy life, even though they are both murderers. They go to the house and they're like, you know what? We're going to clean it out. And Lowen miraculously finds a secret compartment under the bed with a knife, which we didn't even talk about the missing knife thing, which
Yeah.
that's for another day. And a letter that tells us that the book was all fake. Then Verity did not kill her daughter, and she was planning to leave her husband with her son because she didn't feel safe any longer. Ryan, what does Lowen do with this information?
She rips it up and flushes it, I think. Like, what a monster. You just murdered an innocent woman, but you're like, well, I got my man and my baby, so I'm fine. Like, we're happy now. That's just a misunderstanding. Life.
I want to know all of the people that read this and thought, I mean, did they think then at the end, do you think people think that Lowen's a terrible person and Jeremy is a terrible person and they're like horrified? Or are they like Lowen and like, oh, well, okay, that happened, but they were misled.
Yeah. I really hope people read this and realize that she's a monster. He's a monster. Verity's an idiot. She's not in a coma or whatever. She could have left at any point. Why did she write the letter and well, to be fair, she was trying to leave, I guess. She was saving up money or something. She was diverting.
She's a multi-million-dollar author.
Yeah, and she was diverting funds to another bank account or something. I don't know. But
she's the money maker. She's
yeah.
the one who bought all of this.
Just go to the police and be like, my husband tried to kill me. He found this fake thing. None of that happened.
And Ryan, I mean, this was the thing that I couldn't get out of my head once I closed it. I had 10 minutes left in my flight. Was she had printed this thing? It was a printed paper copy of a fake book.
Yeah.
There is no reason for her ever to have printed something she had no intention of ever publishing and was using as a writing exercise.
Right. Yeah, I mean, maybe we should explain, this was a technique taught to Verity by a writing instructor called antagonistic journaling, which I don't know if that's a thing, but she credits this technique as how she's able to get into the minds of villains. But sure, write these, things, but it was very polished for just journaling. It was written within chapters, and it didn't come across, and then it was printed. It was so weird.
There were and this goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, right? There were just so many threads that didn't make sense or were not taken to fruition, so that by the end of the book, you're just sort of sitting there going, terrible people got away with murder and now they're going to have a baby.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the sex scenes were Lowen being very subservient to Jeremy and Verity being very subservient to Jeremy. And I feel like that was very telling. They're they acted like he was a Greek god sent to Earth and just the hottest thing ever. I don't even know what he looks like. I couldn't even picture him. I don't
know. Me either.
I mean, there was no I couldn't picture any of them actually. But it just was kind of gross how they were so subservient to this man where they Lowen ends up committing murder.
Yeah. So it in my head,
sexy.
No. There's a weird sort of fascination with oral sex that just was beat into the ground so much. Funny enough, I only had one character in my head, and I don't know why, But for some reason, Verity to me looked like Kathleen Turner in Serial Mom.
Oh,
And
that's
that
fun.
was the only image I could get in my head about her. I have no idea. I don't know that it was a reference from the book or anything like that. But in my head, that is who I saw. Because she's like that perfect housewife, but we're reading this thing where she's actually a villain. And that was sort of Serial Mom, where she was like doing these
Yeah.
awful things, but a perfect housewife. So there you go. That was my thing.
I was getting like whatever happened to Baby Jane vibes, but like I couldn't tell which one was the Joan Crawford and which one was the Betty Davis. They're interchangeable for me.
And then in a way, like this is a weird like connection to Misery to me by Stephen King. Like this whole, I don't know. There's so much in this book where I was just like, what is going on in this person's mind?
Yeah. No clue. It's I don't even know how you come up with that because I would just feel so gross writing it.
I know. And putting it in the world and saying it's yours.
But then it's on TikTok and it's huge and it's the #2 selling book in the United States last year.
I know. And I think that's fair to say Ryan and I may not be the target audience for this book. And clearly it resonated with a lot of people. So, we are not the end all be all opinion. You have heard how we felt about it. But there are tons of people you can listen to who absolutely loved this book, if that is what you're looking for.
I wish you luck.
So Ryan, having read one Colleen Hoover, did you go out and buy all the rest?
I did not. I really didn't think I thought it might be weird and I thought it might not be good, but I didn't expect to just hate all the characters at the end. So it was like pointless for me. Like it wasn't a fun ride. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't thrilling. It wasn't romantic. It was just confusing. Like they like the main characters, the supposed hero of the story murdered somebody and was fine with it.
Yeah.
And then was fine with finding out the reason they murdered her was wrong and then just moved on with their life.
Yeah.
I mean, I might have to read Verity too. Verity, the Ghost of Verity or something, or I don't know how, maybe like The Revenge of Crew. I don't know. They need therapy.
I will say that you and I are fine with books where we don't like the characters. Like a disliked main character is not a problem. But for me, it was how, and I'm going to use a real sophisticated word here, icky. I felt when this book was over. I just felt gross. I felt gross. And that's my concern. That's why, I mean, will I read another one? You can't say no. You never know what the world is going to do. But I just hope that her other books don't make people feel icky like this one.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we just have to read all 6 and then all 6 best-selling books of last year and just become experts.
I think if we did that, then our opinion would hold even more water.
I think so too.
But then I buy all the books, so I would have a whole entire shelf of Colleen Hoover, which I don't know that I'm ready to go there yet.
I am very grateful I borrowed the ebook from the local library. No trees were harmed in the use of my copy, and I supported a local institution of knowledge by borrowing Colleen Hoover.
Oh, goodness gracious. Well, Ryan, we have officially read some Colleen Hoover.
Yay. I'm kind of glad we did it because now I know. It's kind of one of those things where, like, even if you watch this video and you hear people's opinion, you kind of don't believe it until you read it yourself.
Yes, yes.
So I am glad for that fact. But
Well,
it was kind of rough.
yeah. Well, so I'm ready in the comments. You know, we want to hear what you have to think. I'm ready, more or less, to be torn apart by all the Colleen Hoover fans of the world. So feel free. Just be nice about it, please. You know, no need to attack Ryan or I as people. You can attack our opinions all you want. But, you know, hopefully this was pretty honest from the both of us. We are, in general, pretty nice people when it comes to books. And so this was our honest reaction to the #2 best-selling book in 2022.
Yes. I gave it 2 stars. I think on Goodreads. And I think, like, I mean, I can't remember the last time I gave a book 2 stars.
Yeah.
Normally, if I just didn't like it, I would just stop reading it and just not rate it. But I mean, this book was bad and I gave it 2 stars even. I mean, that's how nice we are.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't even give it a star rating because I was like, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do, and I didn't want to put it out there yet until I had finished this video. But 2 seems reasonable to me because we're good people.
You know, and I posted my review on Instagram and I didn't get one response that said, you know, you're wrong. This is an amazing book. I loved it. It was all either thank you for warning me or I hated this book. So I don't know if there's like no overlap in like the Venn diagram of TikTok, book talk people and like the people I follow on Instagram, but I don't know. We'll see what YouTube says.
We will. Well, Ryan, this was so much fun. So thank you very much because I know I had to talk you into this a bit.
A bit. I mean, I'm glad we read it. It wasn't a hard read, so it wasn't like work. I do fear for the world a bit, so where this was like the best-selling book, second best-selling book of the year.
And with that, Ryan, I have to say thank you for joining me. I hope you all enjoyed this video. And until next time, Ryan and I wish you happy reading. Bye, everyone.
Bye.